Vlogarama again, near my birthday. It's a heck of a day. I'm testing out ProRes on the Atomos Ninja V Plus and a cool recording method that I'm gonna try, and I hope it works. Let's go.
Welcome, Magnus here, and in today's video we're going to talk about what made me buy the Atomos Ninja V Plus. If you're new to this channel, definitely consider subscribing. I talk about cameras specifically for video, so if you're into that type of stuff, consider watching this video, and if you like it, subscribe. Thank you. So let's talk about why I'm making this video. Now, I made videos in the past talking about the Atomos Ninja V Plus and why I didn't think that I would want to buy it for my R5. I also made videos talking about the R5C, and the R5C had a bunch of pros and cons, but the cons were enough so that I didn't want to buy that camera, such as the poor battery life and the removal of the in-body image stabilization, which is something I actually do use a lot for videos, as well as the comparatively less than stellar autofocus system that was on that. Now, granted, it's improved and it's not bad now, but at the time it wasn't considered as good as the Canon R5 in video mode. In stills mode, it was pretty much identical. So I held out because I thought the R5 firmware updates would actually give me features that I wanted, and I was right. So the R5 updates for video included removing the overheating, improving autofocus, and better compression rates for the internal 8K RAW, as well as the H.265 files in 10-bit 422, for example, that has a smaller format that makes it not only easier to edit, but also easier on your card space. So I was pretty happy, but there was one thing that I was holding out for, and that was the removal of the 30-minute time limit on the Canon R5. That was something that I held out for a long time, and I heard from Canon rumors, just like everyone else did, that maybe possibly you might have that 30-minute time limit removed in a firmware update. But here we are, 2023. The camera was released 3 years ago, and the removal of the 30-minute time limit is nowhere to be seen. Now, I've seen articles, which I can't find right now, that actually said that it would be pretty much impossible to remove the 30-minute time limit on this type of camera without some sort of like software or hardware changes in order to do it, having to do with the fact that the serial numbers assigned for these type of cameras are one way, as an example. But to have that removed, you'd almost have to change like the serial number and the tag number for these type of cameras, and they can't physically do that. Don't quote me on that. That was just me giving an example of why they can't change it, but it's not the true example. I forget what it actually was, but in other words, what I am saying is that you couldn't really do it in a firmware update, which kind of disappointed me. But with that said, and with me not wanting to spend another damn near $4,000 to buy another camera just to have the 30-minute time limit removed, I bought the Atomos Ninja V Plus. Now, I went with the Ninja V Plus because it's kind of future-proof. It can do 8K RAW, ProRes RAW, actually, to be honest. And it's actually newer than the Atomos Ninja V, and it has a better processor, which to me, it says that in the future, they might be able to update the firmware on the Atomos Ninja V Plus more frequently. That might actually improve the features, where you might see the Atomos Ninja V sunsetted when it comes to updates. That's why I went with that one. Now, I bought it. I had the necessary batteries for it. I also bought an SSD to use with it. I didn't get the custom one that's designed for it. I didn't mind to have a bigger one because, quite honestly, I thought that it fit fine. And then I needed a reason to film a video. So once again, I went with my friend Sohpia Angelica to record her performance in Times Square. And here was my experience. So I went to the show and I took the Atomos Ninja recorder with me. Now, I set up an interesting rig here that I'll show you right here. Having this nice small rig cage and having the Atomos on top with the microphone on the side, it looked pretty legit. Now, obviously, it weighed more than what I'm used to, and I couldn't have the camera on, for example, a gimbal. and walk around with it like I've done in previous years. However, the added weight of this complex rig made it actually a lot steadier to hold a camera, so I wasn't as shaky as usual. And I made sure that I kept it as steady as possible, and I turned on enhanced stabilization because since I'm filming externally with these more zoomed in lens, I wanted it to be very steady. And it turned out actually pretty fine. In this day, I wanted to record 8K ProRes RAW as much as I possibly could, but I didn't. Why? Because 8K ProRes RAW does not work with Adobe Premiere the way that I want it to, and it doesn't work at all with DaVinci Resolve. Now, when you import 8K ProRes RAW into Premiere asks you to download the codec that would be necessary in order for you to edit ProRes RAW. But then when you get it in there, you can't use the raw controls that is usable when you record off of the R5 internally for 8K RAW. You don't have white balance controls. You don't have ISO level controls, which you would have gotten if you used DaVinci Resolve. Premiere doesn't actually let you control ISO selections in the Canon RAW, which is a little bit annoying, but it's unfortunately something that you can't put up with. But at the very least, having white balance control is something that I wanted, and you don't get that with ProRes RAW. You get to choose some color spaces, but they seem to be pretty much random and not laid out the way I would want them. So there's no point in recording 8K ProRes RAW on the R5 using the Atomos Ninja V Plus. And can I tell you that it edits like crap on Premiere Pro? It runs so slow, and it's so much slower than using the internal 8K RAW off of the R5. So there's no point. I'm sticking to 4K high quality and recording in both internally in that quality setting and externally. Now, I did also record 8K RAW internally on the camera, which conveniently, while I'm recording 8K RAW internally, I can have a backup proxy recorded in ProRes, high quality, on the Atomos. So I thought that that rig like that is amazing when wanting to record 8K. Just record internally instead of externally. And you have all the controls of the Atomos visually, so you can make sure that you get good looking footage. Here's how my experience was once I've gotten the recording modes and what I was going to do with them. I used the camera, I followed the artist around, I was around all day just recording random shots, B-roll, and I noticed that my eyes started to glance a lot more to the Atomos Ninja V Plus, more than the small screen in the R5. And having this rig, walking around with it, seeing that I was in focus, looking at that beautiful screen, especially in that bright sunlight, made it a heck of a lot easier to see what I was filming. And I remember while looking up at that screen, I would see other people looking at the screen too and noticing like, wow, it looks so professional. I had a LUT on that actually was pre-installed on the Atomos Ninja V Plus, specifically for Canon Log 3 to Rec 709, which looked pretty good. And I actually had it baked into the footage so that it would be easier for me to grade without me having to just apply it in post, which was also a big plus for me, because if I didn't want it graded, I had the internal R5 recording the C-Log 3 version of the footage anyway. So it was like backup file on top of backup file, which is good. And then I started to notice something that was kind of irritating me. While everyone was moving around and I tried to get the artist or other people in focus, I noticed that I would have to look back at the Canon R5 screen to make sure that the autofocus was tracking them correctly, and if not, touch the screen and then look at my Atomos Ninja V Plus. That is annoying, but it's something that I can live with in order to make sure that everything is actually working out right. But I was looking at both screens every now and then to make sure that the right person is in the square in focus on the R5, and then looking at the screen to make sure everything looks good and by composition is good, and going from there. So that was a bit of a downside, but it was okay. But one of the things that I actually really liked about my rig and my setup is that there were other videographers besides me on set. One of them was actually using a Lumix camera. Another had a rigged phone with a microphone. But because of my setup, I felt like I was pro on set. Like when everyone, the producers, the director saw me and he saw my camera and that I'm working with an artist, he's like, yeah, your setup looks good. Go up on stage if you want and film on stage. And everyone treated me with respect. Now, everyone at Wonderama is amazing. But I also felt a little bit of an added privilege because I had the professional setup that I never really had before previously, because my other monitors that I have weren't as high quality. With this setup and this camera, it really looked like I meant business. And that's what having a monitor can do for you sometimes, though it wouldn't be convenient for many shoots. Now, all in all, I will say the experience was positive, and it is definitely worth bringing with me, mostly on longer shoots. But the experience here, especially if I have a production shoot, I would definitely bring it along just to make sure that I not only get the right footage the first time without any hiccups or mistakes, but also look professional while doing it, which I really enjoyed. This is why I like having my rig. Now, when it came to editing, like I mentioned before, 8K ProRes RAW does work on Premiere, but it's just too slow. You can't edit anything, no matter what you do to the quality. So it wasn't going to work with that. And you can't adjust white balance. So, like I said, unusable. But the HQ ProRes that I had recorded, along with the H.265 files internally, worked pretty well. Now, when comparing to the compressed H.265 files versus the ProRes RAW, I will tell you that my editing experience is different only slightly. Now, you'll notice that if you're looking at the player, the H.265 files play pretty much without problems in Adobe Premiere, just like the ProRes RAW files. Now, if I'm actually scrubbing back and forth in the footage, yes, the ProRes files do scrub better. Slightly, but barely enough of a tangible difference. The second thing, that initial LUT that was used in the Atomos, I like ever so slightly better. It seemed that the reds were a lot more accurate in the Atomos footage when compared to the footage from the R5 and then applying Canon's Canon Log 3 to Rec 709 LUT. Just slightly better. And then I did, of course, some color correction, and I thought that the Atomos footage would look only slightly better. Is it big enough to make a difference? Nah. I can definitely get the internal camera looking just as good. For many productions, I'm going to enjoy the fact that I can record without a 30-minute time limit, which is what I wanted, and it cost me less than buying an R5 Mark II probably would, or an R5C, which I don't want to deal with those flaws. So do I think that it's worth buying an Atomos Ninja V Plus, even though I can't use the 8K ProRes RAW files? I would say yes, especially if you want to avoid purchasing a new camera when you already own the R5. If you didn't have an R5 but you're looking to upgrade, I would almost recommend wait for an R5 Mark II announcement, then make your decision. But go from there. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you have one Atomos Ninja V Plus? And what made you get one? Let me know. And as always, you can like, share, and make my day if you subscribe today. This is Magnus, and I'm out. See you guys next time.